Hello, are you following the stock markets as an investor or a trader? In this video, I talk about two types of measures of intraday change, direction and variation, and compare several European Amsterdam listed stocks in terms of these measures as well as their one-year trajectories for the year 2023. My name is Jimmy Lepping. I am a psychologist and statistician with an interest in a wide variety of research topics, including the financial markets and time series models to make sense of the financial markets. And none of the content of this video should be viewed as investment or trading advice. I just like to share some analysis and show what you can do yourself as part of your own research if you know how to use open source programs such as R, Python, JASP and Jamovi. So here you see the one-year chart of BE Semiconductor Industries, the stock that performed best on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange in 2023. This stock well more than doubled in 2023 and provides a very nice example of what a classical buy and hold investment strategy can do in a year time, provided of course that you are in the right stock. Because if the stock you hold goes like this, buy and hold is not so fun, at least not from a one-year time perspective. Note that these charts are not to be interpreted as any kind of recommendation in favor of or against buy and hold. We just need to be mindful that individual stocks can move in different directions, and as a consequence, holding them can result in a gain or loss of some kind. Of course, just buying and holding for a year or for several years is not the only strategy out there. While the key of investing lies in taking a longer time perspective, often several years, there are people who actively buy, sell, increase and decrease positions in specific stocks on a monthly, weekly or even daily basis. And if you are a day trader, there are loads of sources that can provide daily stock performance and in some cases even performance at the level of hours or minutes in a day. Personally, I am more of an investor than a trader and generally prefer to hold stocks of financially sound companies that in most cases return decent dividends instead of having to spend lots of time on daily movements. And in my case, stocks are only one part of a diversified portfolio. I trade very little, usually allocate most of my time watching stock market developments to the weekends, and mainly analyze intraday and other movements of stocks because this kind of data provides great opportunities to develop and test time series models for shorter and longer term analysis in the financial markets as well as in some other settings. And when it comes to intraday movement, I tend to take a longer term perspective, taking several months or even several years of daily movements of the same stocks to understand shorter and longer term patterns. There are several online platforms that allow one to view and or download daily opening, high, low and closing values of individual stocks and indices. I tend to get my data from Yahoo Finance. And in this video, I present two types of measures that I use for understanding intraday movement. Both types of measures of intraday movement that I use have in common that they are mathematical functions of the daily opening, the daily high and the daily low. On the left, we see the first type of measure, direction. For direction, I use a mathematical function that returns a positive value if the distance between open and high is larger than the distance between open and low, a negative value if the low is further away from the open than is the high, and a value of 0 in the few cases where high and low have exactly the same distance to the opening. And on the right, we see the second type of measure, variation. And for this second type of measure, I use a mathematical function of the distance between high and low relative to the opening of that day, which returns a lower value for days when the distance between high and low is small, and returns a higher value for days when the distance between high and low is on the larger side. And in this chart, I have plotted a total of 73 companies from the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, from the large, mid, and small cap indices, in terms of their median intraday direction for the year 2023 on the horizontal axis, and their median intraday variation for the year 2023 on the vertical axis. The dashed lines indicate the median on both measures for this sample of 73 stocks altogether for the year 2023, of course. And here I highlight 7 stocks that are located at, relatively speaking, well, most or second most extreme on at least one of these two measures. And we are going to have a look at each of these 7 stocks in terms of their scores on this intraday chart and their 1-year trajectory. Starting with the stock in green on the right, BC, which stands for BE Semiconductor Industries, and is a stock in the technology sector and part of the Dutch Large Cap Index. This company has the highest median score on the intraday direction. And as we already saw in the beginning of this video, BE Semiconductor Industries has had a terrific rally in 2023, well more than doubling in value in this 1-year time window. And in line with the positive intraday direction measure, we see moves up in most of this 1-year time window. On the other hand, on the other extreme here, we find the AZRN or Azerion stock, which is a small cap stock in the communication services sector that gets the lowest intraday direction but highest intraday variation medians of this set of 73 companies for the year 2023. And in line with these statistics, the chart demonstrates downward movement in most of the year. Second worst performer on the intraday direction measure is Fast or Fastnet, which is a small cap stock in the consumer cyclical or consumer discretionary sector. And when we see the graph, the chart here, we see that again mostly downward movement dominates this year. However, not in all cases are these intraday measures so nicely in line with the yearly trajectory, as is shown in the next example, TWKY or the mid-cap stock Just Eat Takeaway. The intraday direction score of this stock is the same as the median intraday direction of the sample, yet it scores second highest on the intraday variation measure. Just Eat Takeaway has been one of the more volatile companies on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, showing both strong intraday movement and strong movements between days, weeks and months. Traders who timed well certainly had chances to make money with positions in this stock, as I did myself in the beginning of 2023, very early on, but equally poor timing could have resulted in substantial losses. Over the full calendar year 2023, Just Eat Takeaway has been one of the more poorly performing companies on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, and a buy and hold strategy for this year would have resulted in a substantial loss of value. Yet its intraday direction score indicates that from this perspective the company is not among the poorest performers, since we have seen a fair mix of good and bad days for this stock in this year. Next, we will have a look at the two companies that score lowest on the intraday variation measure, which are KPN in the communication services sector and the Dutch Large Cap Index, and UNA or Unilever, also in the Dutch Large Cap Index, in the consumer defensive or consumer staples sector. Both KPN and Unilever are often seen as somewhat more defensive stocks, which are unlikely to have strong moves up in good times, but equally tend to not be among the biggest divers in bad times either. This feature is visible for these two companies at intraday level as well. And well, on the other measure, we see a slightly negative intraday direction for Unilever and a slightly positive intraday direction for KPN. Unilever did not have its best year in 2023 and lost some value. Note that this chart shows the dividend adjusted daily close per trading week, meaning that the lower scores on the right in the most recent weeks indicate a loss relative to the start of the year, even after accounting for dividend. But of course, many investors in Unilever may hold this stock with a multi-year time perspective, enjoying a moderate dividend every year and not really worrying about temporal fluctuations in the stock value in specific months or weeks. Although Unilever and KPN have about the same low intraday variation score, KPN performs slightly better than Unilever on the intraday direction. And KPN's chart helps to understand why that is so. Although for much of the year the trajectory has been somewhat sideways with fluctuations up and down, over the full 1 year period we see more increase than decrease. Investors holding KPN throughout this year have enjoyed a nice increase in the stock price and enjoyed a 4 to 5% dividend as well. A percentage which, by the way, seems to be set to increase for this company in the next years. Finally, let's have a look at Adyen. Adyen is a stock that got really hammered sometime early in the second half of the year after a disappointing earnings and outlook update. Investors holding Adyen throughout the year would have seen a loss of value at the end of the year, yet both the first half of the year and the recovery after that dive in the early second half of the year provided opportunities to make money, both in terms of holding for a few months and in terms of holding for shorter periods. And it is therefore not surprising that Adyen scores above the median intraday variation and is second best performer on the intraday direction measure, because over the full 1 year period there were more days with upward movement than there were days with downward movement. Anyway, that's it for this video, which, as my other videos on this channel, is not supposed to be used as investment or trading advice, but simply to share a few tips and tricks in terms of some possibly useful statistics one can distill from a wide range of possible statistics on financial markets data. Statistics which can be distilled fairly easily if you know how to use open source software such as R, Python, Jasp, or Jamovi. I hope you find this useful, and if you have any ideas or suggestions for future videos, you can leave a comment below this video or just drop an email using the email address that I shared below this video. Thank you for listening, have a good day, and see you soon.